Passion with your cooperation. Each one of you should have had ample time to prepare questions and concerns pertaining to the proposed budget. We're going to start with District 7 and go through each district down to District 1. And once every one of us has had our chance to express our concerns and questions, then we'll open it up to the floor for the council. Now, this is a work session. It's not a public hearing, so address your comments to either a fellow council member, the mayor, finance director, if necessary. We can bring the department heads that are here into it. Hopefully that's already been taken care of with the process between the department heads and the mayor. Okay? District 7, Councilor Fink.
Think is this working? Yes, very good. I guess first of all, I would like to thank the mayor and everybody, including Doug and all the department heads, for putting together the budget. I'm certainly anticipating we're not going to be going into, an emergency type of situation like we have in the past. So I'm fully anticipating being able to support a budget for us at the next council meeting, so we can put that behind us and move on. A couple of general comments. I know there was some, and I'm going to not necessarily go to line items in the budget, but I know there's a $15,000 expenditure in for some drainage improvements on Mobile Drive. I appreciate you guys including that. We had that in the budget, I guess, several years ago, and unfortunately with the financial climate that we're in, that had to be cut, and it's back in the budget, so I appreciate that. That certainly makes those residents down there whole again. Very pleased to see bridge loans not having to be made. That's fantastic. Very pleased to see the chamber getting the funding that I think they so desperately need. Increasing that from 150 to 218,000, I think, is an extremely positive message that we're sending to the chamber and the business owners in the community. So for that, I applaud you for taking that step to do that. I would encourage, the Prattville Airport, a lot of the money that $50,000 goes towards is oftentimes in the form of some type of matching grants, so that money actually gets turned into significantly more money from the FAA. So for that, I applaud you as well. The library, obviously that goes without words, but I applaud you for increasing the funding to the library as well. I mean, it's hard, and I know it is. It's very difficult to go through these community initiatives because they're all deserving of funding and increased funding and everything else. I guess the big issue that we've got is that there is a sunset of the tax. So come January 1, the tax goes to a ½ cent. And I think there was concern on one part. I feel comfortable supporting the budget as is, as presented. There was some concern that that ½ cent could be placed upon a portion of the city that's in Elmore County by a neighboring governing authority, but it's my understanding that counties can only impose tax based on the state legislature enacting that. I just got word from Council President Reniger that except in the case of earmarking it for education. So as it stands right now, and I don't know the ins and outs of how earmarking it for education could enable them to possibly pass a tax that would keep it at the 9.5% and that ½ cent go towards them. But I think as it stands right now, at least the knowledge that I've got with the fact that the legislature should have to enact that tax increase, I feel comfortable supporting this. It does put a reserve of about $800,000 in the bank at the end of the year. I think, cash projections have shown that it's not this year that's going to be critical, but the following year more so. And I think, given the fact that it's a responsible and sound budget, that I feel comfortable supporting it. And we'll have new council members coming on board. It'll be incumbent upon them to address moving forward the issues in coming years. But I feel certain that this budget will be good for 2012, 2013. And thank you for putting it together.
Well, thanks for those comments, and there again, I mean, Doug Mosley and his staff have worked very, very hard on this. I've said this numerous times before, without Lisa Thrash and Doug Mosley, you know, there's so much behind the scenes that, because we are a huge service-oriented company, and service-oriented companies, you have to have personnel, and also the personnel, for them to be able to do the job, they have to have equipment, so you will find some equipment in here. But one comment I do need to briefly touch on is on the Chamber of Commerce. The move on that is for them to be paid 20% off of the lodging taxes, which would calculate up to $218,000 max, so they will be paid in arrears. But our long-term goal is for the smaller amount, since you brought up community initiatives, is the smaller ones to pay them very soon, very quick after we get into the next year. But the bigger ones, like the Chamber of Commerce, for example, we're going to be paying them monthly instead of quarterly. So I think that will be a better workable solution for all of us. But thank you for your comments, and the staff has worked very hard on this.
District 6, Councilor Bowles.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate everybody coming out tonight. I'll try to keep it brief. I want to start, Doug, with there's a lot of salaries in here that we no longer have, but they're in budget. I'm going to use the police department, for example. We have 3 captains. Page 29, there's no line. Look at police captains, 3. $142,762.58. We have 2, am I right? There's 2 captains. Now, in the last budget, we had 3. In the budget before that, we had 3, but we've always had 2 since Chief Huggins came on. I would like to know how many people do we have in this budget that we presently do not have, that are not employed, but maybe should be employed. We hope to put them back on sooner or later. And what I would like to do is have a list and then go through here before we either amend the budget so all those are taken out and put into the general fund. Not saying we won't hire them, but if we do hire the people, then we will not only hire them, but take it from the general fund and put it back into that department. In that way, what it'll do for us, it won't leave $47,000 cash in that department. So if they need some money, they have, oh, we got this salary that we're not using, let's use that money, and the budget is still budget neutral. Does that make sense what I'm saying? I'm looking at it like I've lost my mind.
Are you asking to take that, find out how much those amounts are and take those out of the salary so they can't reallocate that later on?
That's
because
correct.
The only thing that can get charged to the salaries line item is salaries.
I'd still feel better if they were out of the budget, and then if we ever hire the position, we can go back and amend the budget. We could do that in the same meeting.
Several of the positions that are vacant are going to need to be filled pretty quickly,
That's
like,
fine.
almost immediately.
We can still, it's what, a vote to re-amend the budget, it's not that much work, is it?
It's not an extreme amount of work, but it is. I mean, every time we make a change to the budget, I have to completely redo all the numbers. So it's completely doable, yes.
Yes, okay, so it is doable.
Yes.
Okay.
That's my biggest, really that's my number one thing I want to work on this budget, is to try to clean up all the salaries that we're not actually paying, so we know exactly what we should be paying at the end of the budget year. The second thing, I have to commend everybody that the budgets are getting better and better over the last 4 years. They're just, it's amazing how far we were to where we are today, and I do appreciate that. On the sales tax, everybody knows that I've been pushing to keep it because we need to pay. The one thing I did campaign on was get out of debt. That sales tax is doing it. I don't know if y'all want to take it to 8 months or what y'all want to do with it, but as a business owner, it's devastating to the businesses that have to restructure their tax to 0.5%, and you said that next year we're going to need it. Then we come right back and add it back on. The business owners in the community do not want to be jerked around on this tax because we're having to spend an entire month getting all of our business lined up to straighten out the tax whenever the council does change it. So if we're in a position where we need to hang on the tax because we're okay this year, but we're not going to be okay next year, then let's hang on to the tax and let's put that money towards debt and let's get this debt gone. And I feel like after knocking on the doors, the majority of Prattville wants the debt gone. So I urge the council, let's quit playing around with all of our citizens, quit playing around with the vendors, and man up and do what we have to do to get this debt behind us so we can get the city back on where we need to get it back on. And then we can concentrate on moving forward on pay raises or whatever else might be in the near future. But I would ask the council, let's look at this in the next meeting and go ahead and get it handled.
Well, I would like to make some comments about the different salaries that you previously talked about. And that, because of some of the economic situations that not only the city of Prattville has found itself in, but also the country. We have, I've been out here working, trying to be very creative. I have a lot of cross-training that's going on, a lot of multitasking going on, and some of these positions that are in there, we're really trying to see if we can multitask and cross-train and still deliver the product that the city of Prattville, the citizens of Prattville are looking for. I do have some that are not going to be filled, but until we get a little bit further into the year, I just want to make certain we have a safety net out there so that if there are some that do not seem to be working out, then they can still go back to their position. And I know one, for example, is going to be the IT director, and I've been very, very fortunate with Doug Mosley, with his CPA background and also his IT background. One of my thoughts on it, if we can find a merger in there for him to be able to manage both of those, will actually in the long run be a big cost savings to the city. In the mayor's office, trying to find a way of having multiple positions in there, trying to find some that can still cross-train and save the city some money. And we've been very fortunate to have city personnel on hand. Teresa Lee has stepped up to the plate to be able to do her job as both webmaster and also the mayor's executive assistant. But you can only keep pushing that envelope as much as until finally you've got to say this is as far as we can push it. The mayor's executive secretary, I have over, as everybody sitting up here is aware of, I have been utilizing city personnel out of both. Started off with the police department, we ended up with the fire department, and but I do have to find a very workable solution so the mayor's office can continue doing the job it's supposed to be. And that's, I guess, my stance is I like the way it's written up now. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not saying let's spend the money. I'm just saying let's put it into reserve. Then they're still protected, but the money will be sitting in reserves. And that way we know as a council that money is in reserves, and if we ever need to hire, it makes it a little harder for us to hire that person because we are looking at reserves. Most people in the community think High Point got us where we are today. It wasn't High Point, y'all. It was salaries. Flat out, it was the salaries that got us in the jam. 72% of our budget went to employees. That's way too high for any business to survive. And the famous quote that I've always heard, you can't run this like a business. And it's true because you can't fire people. So I want to be very, very hesitant about hiring people because of that. I don't want to see us 4 years from now get out of this jam and get right back in it with too many employees. So I would feel very comfortable knowing these salaries are put in reserve and would make it harder for this group to go back and rehire. Thank you.
Go to District 4, Councilor Miller. If you'll activate that microphone over there, please.
Mayor.
Okay. Is it working now? Yeah, I would just, in terms of an overall view, I think the budget's pretty well done. I appreciate all the hard work that went into it, because I know year in, year out, that takes a lot of effort on the part of a lot of people. I've got a couple of questions. I will echo Councilman Fink's comments about the library and the chamber. I'm delighted to see both of those have an increase in their allocation, and a relatively significant increase, so I appreciate that. I did want to ask, and right now I'm on your summary here, the couple of things that caught my attention. The wastewater enterprise fund, that's on page 7. The change in the fund balance is like $2,400, and I guess that I just sort of had a notion that we were going to make more progress on our goal of building a reserve for unexpected expenses, in addition to the plan that we had for capital and those other needs. So I guess that's the first question that I have, is that that just seems like a very small figure. Although I'm glad it's in the positive direction, it just seems really like a low figure to me. You want me to go through all my comments and then? The other thing on page 9, I know that you're comparing in this document approved budget for current fiscal year and proposed budget for fiscal year 13, but I didn't appreciate, the figure for the lodging tax, the $1,090,000 represented that we've got 2 major hotels that are, one, the Holiday Inn, has been out of commission for a good period during the fiscal year. It's slated to come back online, and then the other one that is there is the Iron Home Depot, is Holiday Inn Express. So those 2 are going to be both significant sources of lodging tax. So I was just trying to put this in perspective in terms of why that figure is not higher on this revenue column. And it may be compared to actual for the current fiscal year. That might be part of the explanation. The other thing, if I can shift to this book, I wanted to ask a couple of questions. One, you can look at the section on legislative. Those are really the funds that underwrite what we as a council do. And it sort of caught my attention, and I know this is, I'll be off the council, so, maybe dabble here, but the bottom 4 figures add up to about $21,000 for the lodging, travel, meals, and education. And I know that while we've been under so many fiscal challenges over this past few years, we have really sort of, at least in my experience, compared to my first couple of terms on the council, we really did cut back on travel. National League of Cities and a lot of other travel. So just trying to put that in perspective in terms of it still adds up, to 21,000. I know we're going to need some education, especially for our new folks that are on the council, and really that includes, I think, Councilor Brown and Councilor Strickland is relatively new. But, the continuing ed stuff that the Alabama League offers. But anyway, I just offered that comment. I don't really know if that figure may be appropriate. The other question I had was about the group health insurance, and I know that's one that I think you'll recall I had made an effort to have that benefit taken off the list of options for the elected officials and appointed positions in the city, but that ultimately was not the will of the council. But I did want to ask Ms. Thrash how that was calculated, that $54,000. Is that assumed the entire council would take that optional coverage, health insurance? So all 7. And currently, how many are taking the existing council? 4. Okay, so it will be a smaller figure if all 7 don't take it this coming year. And just to make sure I understood, I appreciate your comments about Teresa doing double duty and Doug doing double duty, but as I'm reading the IT budget, you are not planning, you've not built in hiring an IT director. Is that correct? Okay. I would just caution you that although they've been ready, willing, and able, and they're obviously gifted to have the skill set to wear these multiple hats, don't, just be mindful that you don't need to sort of burn them out. And also, each of those jobs, I think for each of them is important. All the hats they're wearing, doing double duty. So I would just caution you not to wear them out, burn them out, and ends up sort of shooting yourself in the foot. So no good deed goes unpunished, sort of some version of that. So I commend both of them, and lots of the city employees are doing the same thing to a lesser or greater degree in different areas. So it's sort of a two-edged sword, so I just would offer that sort of observation, just be careful. And that really was it. So I think overall it's really
Mayor, do you need to address any comments from those comments and concerns?
No? Okay, yeah. Thank you, and I am very much aware of, overcasting and trying, we certainly don't burn out our personnel, so we are, so because of some of the economic times that we're in, we are trying to think outside the box, and I do appreciate those comments. And now, also, as far as the some of the other items that are here in the legislative department, I guess, relate to is that, again, just because it's in there does not mean that it's going to get spent. Another, I guess, good example is that with this current budget that we are under, I have challenged all the department heads to come in roughly $1 million in the budget, and we're very, very close, I believe, to accomplishing that. So it's been a very big team effort. Department heads, employees, council, citizens throughout Prattville have really helped out in various ways. So it's, there again, I don't know that I can emphasize that just because it's here in this budget does not mean it's going to get spent that way. And if you are still looking to reduce some costs in the legislative branch, I think the insurance that's in there that I believe is life insurance, I think it's $1,340. But some of that, I think, as we mentioned in some of the other meetings, is that I think that's still going to be tied in through the package that's already been voted on for the different elected officials. And that can only be changed at the 6 months before the quadrennium starts. I think we've already missed that vote. But there's some areas that the money will definitely be spent in. There's also some areas that you need to have for us to run an efficient, service-oriented company or organizations. Our CP over here keeps telling me, you do need to have a small amount of wiggle room in there. So we do have a small amount of wiggle room. But I think with the due diligence of the department heads and employees, everybody else, you will be very, very surprised at the end of this quadrennium when you see the dollars that have not been spent. The mentality of, and I'm certain everybody sitting up here has heard it before, you better spend it by the end of the year, or you won't get that same amount next year. That has been completely taken away. So I'm very proud of the department heads and employees and the hard work that they have done and the returns it's showing back to the citizens of Prattville.
District 3?
One thing I was going to add, since you mentioned the wastewater enterprise fund, one reason that's changing reserve balance is so low, a large portion of the capital outlay that's in this budget is to turn on that lift station that will take some of the pressure off of the Pine Creek station. We really want to get that done, so it moves the flow to where we can actually handle it the best. So that's a large portion of that capital outlay. And think right now, the enterprise fund has about $500,000 or $600,000 in cash in that account, which obviously are not going to use all that for the last fiscal year, so it's running very much in the black. And also on lodging tax, since you had mentioned that. The reason I kept that the same, obviously Holiday Inn was shut down for most of the year, and our lodging taxes were lower this year than last year, so I left it at the same rate it was the previous year, even though those two are coming online, just so we have a very conservative number.
What's your real estimate?
We should come in a little bit, we should come in above that, but I just wanted to be very conservative on that number, especially with it being down.
District 3, Councilor Brown.
I was pleased with the chamber increase as well. So, okay. I was pleased to see the chamber increase in there as well so that they can have more to market our community. And most of my questions I got answered at the one-on-one with each individual department, but I did have a couple of questions. The community initiative section, page 48, and this is just because I'm new to council. I know the League of Municipalities provides education and expert legal care and that sort of thing. Is this a fixed amount, this $8,000, or does it vary per year, or
It's based on population.
based on population?
Yeah, that is one area that's based off of population, and also park deck is another one that's based off of population.
Okay. And the enterprise funds, I think they've been helpful for us to see what's coming in and going out. And you mentioned that you had some other departments in mind that you may think about moving to that, or is it too early to ask what departments you're thinking?
Oh, no, not at all, especially since, it's going to be up to council approval on it. But the very next one that we were looking at is going to be our judicial department. It does have a revenue source on it. There's certain equipment that's specialized for it, and I think that it needs to come out of coming out of our general fund, coming out of our sales tax dollars, and being funded off of the revenue source that it brings in.
I was pleased with the budget. It looks lean and can tell there's a whole lot of work in it. The thing I was most pleased to see was the capital plan for equipment like in the police department. Doug, I think Doug put a whole lot of work into that, going all the way out to 2017. So all this effort, I think it's really going to be helpful as a guide for the future and helping us to prepare better. So thank you for all your hard work.
Yes, there's been a lot of, like that. Doug Mosley has been a lot of sleepless nights over this uncertainty, but and I've harped on it many times. We are a mechanized, service-oriented company, and without the equipment coming in, and if we can eventually get it all built up, my thought process is that if we can rotate this equipment out quick enough, we can buy it at the governmental rate, sell it back out at through Gov's deal or through auction, and a lot of times you can recoup your whole cost out of that equipment, whatever it might be. And so then that way it actually frees up the downtime, the repairs, the vehicle maintenance is having to do. And so it's going to take us a while to get there. Hope it'll be under my tenure, but only time will tell.
Councilor Wood from District 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to thank all the department heads and the mayor and those for what you do. Everybody's doing a decent job. We appreciate it. Got several questions here. First of all, just let me say that our biggest concern is going to be revenue source. I'm going to speak on the taxes before I even get into the budget. Great job has been done there. Ability to put together a good budget, sound budget with what you got to work with. I guess I'm kind of looking ahead to the future. This works right now. It doesn't work next year. So with that being said, whether it be this sitting body or the incoming body, decision must be made concerning the tax issue. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We might as well prepare our minds to make those decisions, whether sooner or later. Preferably, I would prefer sooner based on the fact. We all realize that Prattville sits in 2 counties. Unfortunately, that's a disadvantage to us, Elmo County and Ottawa County. I don't know what the likelihood of Ottawa County doing anything once the half cent is reduced. I do know this. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, the largest revenue source that we have is sales tax. Probably 50% of this budget is sales tax. Once we relinquish, even if the legislative body in Elmo County had to do something to help their side of that river, I believe they would do it. So we need to be mindful of the fact that we need to protect travelers and pay close attention to that. But to this budget right now, I noticed up under the executive, Mayor, you wanted an executive assistant and an administrative assistant. I'm kind of confused on that. An administrative assistant, in my opinion, I'm just thinking we should be able to find an administrative assistant for a lot less than what's here, especially based on the fact that there's a mayor's executive assistant. So I would urge you to just look at that figure on that particular portion of the budget. And that's up on the executive, which actually the executive has an increase of $67,000. But to the rest of it, most of my stuff concerns personnel. That's where we got in trouble at. And Doug, Mayor, or Will can answer these. I'm just going to go down by line. Under the proposed budget, there's an increase of $35,000 in the fire department.
Give us the item page number. So
Page number 12. All of this will be on page number 12 in your budget summary. It won't be in the binder. If you write these figures down as I go down, Doug, then you can answer at the end. Or if you'd like to stop me and answer along the way, that would be fine. But we got an increase of $35,000 in the fire department on the personnel. We got an increase of $39,000 in the police department. Wastewater, we got a decrease of $65,000. Decrease in sanitation of $62,000. And I'm really concerned about that decrease because 2014 coming up, I'm just wondering how we're going to increase personnel and give that service out there in that area. Urban management, we have an increase of $74,000. Then leisure services, an increase of $57,000. Engineering, there's an increase of $90,000. Vehicle maintenance increase of $60,000. Finance, $31,000 increase. As I said, the executive, $67,000 increase. IT, a $59,000 increase. All of this is up on the personnel. My concern is, are we falling short in the areas where there's a decrease? And are we overstepping our bounds where there's an increase?
Okay, help me as we go along. Didn't write all that down, and so but going to the sanitation department, we created the enterprise fund for it. So we also had our street sweeping crew up underneath sanitation, and so where our sanitation fees are being collected for garbage being picked up, that really had no connection with our street sweepers. We initially put the street sweepers in that department, but we're as a stopgap measure because of their CDL driver's license. We felt like we needed them more in that department to help us get through some rough times. Because of them being utilized so much in the sanitation department, our street sweeping has been not as up to par as it needs to be. The one, since coming more in the role of mayor, I have, talking with our city engineer, has really got me to believe that one reason whenever we have had to go to court over some flooding issues, there's really been two areas. One is because we had very good documentation about how we had kept the curbs and the gutters clean, and also through the urban management portion of it, we've been able to keep our ditches clean. And so anytime there has been any kind of litigation there, those records are always brought up, and I just felt like our street sweeping has fallen to the wayside just a little bit. And in other areas, the street sweeping is up underneath the street or engineering, street department, which is actually up underneath our engineering department here. And so that's, we do have two personnel moved out of sanitation going over to the engineering department strictly because of that. The urban management, and we do have a lot of improvements we're going to have to build up in urban management, because with the, I guess you can call it the agreement that the city made with residents and also the county, Watauga County, in 2014, initially it was supposed to be 2010. But right now we have a police jurisdiction that the city provides services in. The county is supposed to clean ditches and maintain streets in that 2014 area. If we're going to stand true to our agreement, we will be taking that over in 2014. To make it good for the police department, they'll have less area to cover, but it's going to be urban management. We'll have to build them up, and you'll find that I do have at least one piece of equipment in this budget to get ready, moving in the right direction for the 2014 area.
So basically, the $74,000 increase in urban management represents probably 2 employees, Doug, 1 employee, and an increase in salaries on others.
A lot of it is seasonal help. And that is one thing that I think we're looking at. You're going to see that we're going to have more and more seasonal help in urban management, leisure services, in other areas. Also, I'm talking with Chief Brown also that potentially might actually work toward a program of having part-time firefighters. So that way they can be on call if we happen to run short on one firefighter. And it's not a really new concept except for here in Prattville. There's other areas, other cities around the state of Alabama that have a, I guess you can call it a reserve list, and it's not coming from their full-time firefighter list.
Okay, thank you. One of the things that I do recommend and think we ought to continue on, and I think that would eliminate the possibility of someone thinking that department or either any branch is going to overspend, continue on the hiring freeze, and his body would be able to approve the spending no matter what's in his budget. We continue on the hiring freeze. Where the chamber is concerned, Mayor, that's good that we made that expenditure, increased it. Primarily the $68,000 increases for what? Coming from, what's the $68,000 increase? Primarily just to increase their budget or for a particular task, and is it coming from here or lodging tax?
It's strictly tied to lodging tax, 20% of the lodging tax. So basically, that figure in there could actually be less. If these hotels do not get online, then you could pretty much say the figure will be less. But it's pretty, that dollar amount is set back for economic development, and we will be having a contract signed with them. Go back to your one comment about the hiring freeze. Now, I was on the council whenever that was voted on. I think that it was a needed tool at that time, but I'm hoping that this administration has proven to this council, the citizens, and the 3 newcomers coming over the council seats, that we are very serious about keeping our employee numbers down to a very needed number. We're not looking to pad any type of department, but we are here to provide the service. Like I've mentioned so many times before, we are a service-oriented company. I really feel like that I would encourage this body to look again at that hiring freeze and entertain the idea of removing it or maybe adapting another little more efficient type method of possibility. The checks and balances we already have in place, one is the budget. We used to be a lump sum budget, and so personnel numbers could be tweaked from it being a lump sum budget. But since we are a line item budget, that makes it a lot more accountable. The other checks and balances we have with the employee numbers are through HR, finance director, and the mayor's role. Continue to come back before the council has not been the most efficient way. Maybe one other option you might look at is if the department, the mayor, the HR, and finance director comes not to the whole council, but maybe just gets the approval from the finance committee. But it's there are several checks and balances in there. I think that we have proven through the cross training, through the multitasking, that and it's a very fine line. You know, we're on one side, I'm saying be careful, don't burn them out. The other side, I'm sort of hearing don't hire anybody else. But it's you know, it's a very fine balancing act, and we're doing the best that we can. And I think we have proven ourselves to date. And I really hope that you guys do entertain the idea of removing that hiring freeze.
Well, I agree with you, man. You've done a good job here. Personally, I'm not saying don't hire anybody. I'm just saying let's make sure we still be careful for another year. And I'm glad to see the new oncoming council members here. And would urge them, and I know they have already looked at this budget and think ahead toward 2014. Because again, I repeat this because I'm telling you it's going to be something that's going to be needed. The council will need additional revenue going into 2014. So if you don't have it, all of those additional people that you're talking about, even thinking about, the money just will not be there. Mr. Chair, that's going to be all for right now. Thank you.
District 1, Councilor Striplin.
Thank you. I too, like everyone else, express appreciation to the mayor and Mr. Mosley for the continued format improvements. This is the third budget that I've seen, and each one is getting a little better. Having the comparative data is very helpful. I would like to make a suggestion, especially on pages like this where you got 4 inches of white space and 3 columns provide us a difference in that, which is exactly what Councilman Wood was talking about. And you wouldn't have to write it down, it would be right here on the page, so it would be very helpful there. I also applaud the idea of the enterprise fund concept. I think it's very appropriate, especially where possible. The 2 departments that we currently have using them are being challenged, in my opinion, to be better managers. These department heads must not only focus on their expense, but they must also focus on their revenue, and hopefully there's a positive difference, and this allows them to manage for capital improvements. Departments with enterprise funds are also responsible for their debt and directly attributed to their department, plus they must make a contribution back to the general fund for the administrative services that are provided by the city. For about the last 18 months, our collective efforts have mainly been focused on the expense side of the budget, and rightfully so. Generally, that is what we as a council see, how well are the departments doing in managing their expenses. However, as was noted tonight, we have several departments that generate revenue. I feel we often do not recognize nor do we applaud the efforts of these departments in their generation of revenue. I recognize the city is a service organization. However, so is my church, my YMCA, and my hospital. But if they don't take in more revenue than they spend, they will not be able to continue providing service. While I don't advocate purchasing the new accounting software, I think it would be interesting to see what the enterprise fund accounting effect would be on the departments that do generate revenue. For that to be a reality, where possible, We have shown Department 9 debt service, page 20, if you wanted to look. We need to reallocate a significant portion of that $768,000 of principal and interest payments, especially if we as a council are interested in seeing a more accurate picture of what each department truly cost. In Department 403, City County Services on page 47, I too am glad to see an increase in funding for the library and our community initiatives. We have many worthy initiatives in our community. I believe these contributions touch many lives in a very positive manner, and often some of the city funds are leveraged with other dollars for greater funding. I applaud the new approach to funding the Chamber of Commerce. However, I question as to whether it will be adequate to meet our expectations. I have not spoken with Chamber officials. One of the things that we should note is that on that amount of incentives, community of initiatives, that while you see a significant difference of $68,000, $36,000 was in a previous column at the bottom of the page. So it's not a full single amount of $68,000 increase for this year. From working with certain organizations that have given grants over the years and require that these funds be spent in one calendar year, I found that if an organization needs $2,000 for a complete project, then giving them $1,000 or even $1,500 will not get you a completed project. It's hard to use one half of a sliding board or one end of a swing set. I've also found that if you contract with a builder to construct a $100,000 house, you're reasonably assured you're going to get a $100,000 house. But if you're expecting a $350,000 house, you will be disappointed. I realize we can't fund every project that comes along, but giving partial funding to several projects does not necessarily meet the goal of a completed project for them or us. I think we've helped host a golfing event for approximately 7 years, investing somewhere between $1 million and $1.5 million in what would have to be called, in my opinion, economic development. If there's not a golf tournament next year, are we going to take those resources and seek that same level of commitment for continued investment in economic development? Don't need an answer on that tonight. I am thankful for the police car inventory that was provided. I'm not sure that I understand it. It's a supplement that's shown under the police department tab. I did review 2 years. My review shows that in 2012, we have 82 vehicles. 13 of them were considered backup, giving us a net of 69. 13 of them have mileage greater than 200,000, and 30 have mileage between 100 and 199,000 miles. 5 years later, in 2017, there will be 92 vehicles, according to the report. 13 used as a backup, giving us a net of 79, with only 2 vehicles having mileage greater than 200,000 and 27 with mileage between 100 and 199,000. Over this period of time, that's an increase of 10 vehicles. Is there a plan to increase the personnel in the police department? I've been told with the implementation of the 2014 plan, there would be a reduction in the areas served by our police department. All in all, I think this is a relatively good budget. As long as the hiring freeze remains in place and the council reviews any additional personnel. I don't have a problem with leaving some of the funding in for strategic planning purposes. However, we need to be cognizant that funds not spent do help build our reserve. One question that I do have concerning the debt, which is shown under the debt tab on page 20. I realized there was an error somewhere along the way, and we, via tax of Elmore County, $240,000. How long will that debt continue, or will that payment continue?
I'm not exactly sure what the end date of that is. I could get that to you tomorrow. I don't have that with me. It's a few years down the road. We're not, as you can see, we were only paying $240,000 principal and interest. So it's not really knocking it down, but I can definitely get that date for you.
Okay, is that shown as total debt somewhere on the city books?
It is shown as debt on the city books.
Thank you.
Okay.
On the capital plan that you mentioned, the reason that there's 10 additional cars at the end, whenever I added a car, I took a car away, but it has on that line surplus. So if we rolled it forward, that car wouldn't be there for the next year. That's the reason there's 10 additional cars. Those 10 are actually surplus. But I didn't take them off so you could see that which cars were surplusing.
Yeah, and that's one thing we're still trying to grasp around is exactly a lot of our equipment, and we're going to be seeing more and more of them going to gov steel or being scrapped or recycled, some there. But I have asked that we do keep possibility one of the oldest police department cars that we have for maybe 20 years from now. Somebody might see it as a classic and might want to see it in the parade. But we're being very conscious of all of our equipment. So it's this is, as we have all talked before, this is a working document, and we're trying to err on the side of caution a lot of times. So my goal is to reduce the equipment that is outdated, inefficient, get it out of our system, because I'm very aware of insurance costs and so forth, just like we all are. So you'll see a lot more of that going on over the next 4 years.
This is my 16th year to review city budgets and offer suggestions, comments, and either vote the budget up or down. I can honestly say that this is one of the better prepared budgets that I have seen in the 16 years. And I will commend the department heads, mayor, especially our finance director, for a job well done. Remind our fellow council members that this is a fluid document. It can be amended at any time. If you have amendments to offer, please have them prepared in writing for next Tuesday night's meeting. Before the budget is voted on, there will be a time for public comment, as there always is, when we get into the agenda, and we can then address the public's concerns if there are any at that time. Now, do you have anything else pertaining to the budget? Any other council? Councilor Wood.
Mayor, this budget has all department heads in here and interim department heads as they are right now.
Yes, so I have talked off and on about gearing up toward a public works division, but that is just, we're still trying to crunch numbers, make certain that it is a worthwhile effort for us, for the city of Providence to move forward in. If we do try to move to a public works department, it will not be in for 2013. It will be geared up to start in the 2014 budget.
Anything else from the council?
And I'm sorry, I might have misspoke. The IT department head, it's not in there, but everything, all the rest of them are.
Anything else? Mayor? We're going to close the work session. We thank everyone for being here tonight, and we'll see you next Tuesday night in the council chamber.